I must confess at the outset that I'm not totally fit, in the sense I'm not totally well. But that seems to be the state with the world also. So I guess that evens things out, you know. We're really not in a very happy situation so far as the world is concerned. And one of the reasons for that is that we are somehow trying to do away with the fundamentals. It reminds me of an age-old story of George Washington. It seems that George Washington was once presented with an axe on his birthday. And young George made appropriate use of that axe by chopping down his father's favorite cherry tree. When his father appeared on the scene, he was naturally rather annoyed and demanded to know who had done the deed. Now, as you know, George Washington never spoke a lie, and he admitted his fault. He said, "Father, I have chopped down your favorite cherry tree," and his father forgave him. But a modern-day George Washington, who was also presented with an axe by his father, and who also did something similar on his birthday by chopping down his father's favorite mango tree, met with a slightly different experience. When his father appeared almost instantly and wanted to know who had chopped down his tree, the modern-day George, who had heard the earlier story, said, "Father, I have done the deed. I'm very sorry. Please forgive me." But contrary to what happened in George's case, the modern-day George's father started beating his son up. Amidst the howls of pain, the poor boy managed to squeak out, "But father, when George Washington chopped down his father's favorite cherry tree, his father forgave him because he spoke the truth. But you are beating me." And the father said, in the case of the original George Washington, when he chopped down his father's favorite cherry tree, his father was not on the cherry tree. Unfortunately, we are living in a world today wherein, like the famous Sanskrit writer, playwright Kalidasa, we tend to chop down the tree on which we sit. We heard a very illuminating discourse from Gurbaksh just now. Gurbakshji, I am really grateful to you, thankful to you for the few minutes that we spent outside and for your speech, in which you pointed out repeatedly that we are not able to start from the beginning. To go back to what Gurbaksh's subject was, hockey, it has taken Gurbaksh more than 35 years to be allocated an astroturf, that is the surface on which a proper hockey game of international standards can be played. In other words, in every walk of life, not just in sports, we seem to be missing the wood for the trees. We are mistaking the grain for the chaff. We are losing our sense of perspective. And what is the reason? That again was found in Gurbaksh's speech. Unfortunately, it's the filthy lucre. It's the bewitching lure of money. It's the temporary heediness of transitory fame. These are the elements that seem to get our priorities all mixed up. As Gurbaksh so rightly pointed out, we are so crazy about a game in this country, which is nothing more than a Commonwealth game, played by a few nations only. But the Board of Control for Cricket in India is the richest body in the world. Once again, it's money. So today, as we live in a world which is known as the postmodern world, academics would call it postmodern, post-colonial, and a world in which we are seeing the trajectory of capital changing. The very trajectory of capital has changed. A world in which several ideological systems have failed, like Marxism, communism. A world where we are beset and beleaguered and besieged by the Niagara of visual gabble. I know I sit among several computer professionals, IT experts, but I still stick to my point and will quote from the famous philosopher Perry Anderson when he says that the internet is more of a curse than a boon. It's not just the internet. Why do I use the phrase Niagara of visual gathering? I'm trying to say that there's so much of information on the net, on our television sets, in the advertising billboards, in the verbiage that goes on in conversation, that we are besieged by that visual gathering. Such is the situation of the world. I call it postmodern, as Frederick Jameson, as the famous high priest of the postmodern would say, Jean-François Baudrillard, and even Jean-François Lyotard. In such a world as this, what can we do? I am a humble filmmaker by profession. I did my post-graduation from the Film Institute, Pune, and when I came out, it was really very, very difficult to make a film. Because unlike a cameraman or a sound recordist, an editor or an art director, it is difficult for the director actually to make the film, because often he has to bring in the finance. And as you know, that is the bottom line once again. It was extremely difficult. One had to do so many different kinds of things, related things, associated things, like say theatre, for example. Television. And television as we know it, truly it is the idiot box. There's no two ways about it. Television exhibits all these degenerative postmodern trends. For example, number one, it is becoming more and more homogeneous. There's a terrible, debilitating unanimity in television. One program looks like another. One person dresses like another, talks like another, walks like another. I'm reminded of another story, and I hope you'll pardon me if I'm not always that serious. There was this famous filmmaker called Sam Goldwyn, you know, of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And he cottoned on to a very famous actor who was out of work, and he said, I've got the role of a lifetime for you. You're going to play Abe Lincoln in my new film. And he was really enamored. Sam said, but you've got to behave like Lincoln. You've got to prepare yourself. You've got to be a method actor. You know what the method is? The method acting is a process which was developed by a famous Russian actor called Konstantin Stanislavski of the Moscow Arts Theatre. And it was developed in the United States by Lee Strasberg. So Sam Goldwyn told this out-of-the-work actor that you have to start living in a log cabin like Lincoln. And he did that. He started living in a log cabin, started talking like Lincoln, walking like Lincoln, breathing like Lincoln. And then one day disaster struck. One could call it an occupational hazard. He was assassinated. That is the problem with today's world. A world of unanimity, a world of homogeneity, a world where we are not able to focus. And that's what television teaches us. One program is very much like the other. It is killing of creativity. I'm really not one of those old-timers who believe that the darkened hall, where we sit at the altar of cinema, is really the pure place for intellection or entertainment. No. But somehow television, over the years, ever since John Logie Baird made that invention and the Britishers refused to give the patent to America, so that America developed television independently, running it at a system called NTSC, as opposed to the phase alternation line, which was the British system. We've had a series of idiot boxes. And in fact, television dulls the intellect. It dulls creativity. It dulls the imaginative processes. Why has the reading habit gone down? Consider, for example, a famous theatrical text called Rhinoceros. What was great about Rhinoceros? Rhinoceros was a play written by the famous French playwright Eugene Ionesco in the 70s, in which everyone in a particular small French town is turning into a pachyderm. turning into a rhinoceros. And it's very strange. And there's one man, the lead character, Roger, says that I at least will not turn into a rhinoceros. Even as I find my wife and my children and my brothers and my sisters, everyone is turning into a rhinoceros. At the very end of the play, despite his great resistance, he too turns into a rhinoceros. What's the moral of the story? Actually, it is the tendency to be unanimous. It's a kind of a bowing down to fascism. That's what happened during Hitler's time. That's what television makes you do. Cinema, on the other hand, gives you the opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, to tread the path which has not been trod before. Everyone knows the famous Robert Frost poem, the path not taken, the road not taken. The last verse is, I shall be saying this with a sigh, sometime ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood and I took the road less travelled by, and that made all the difference. But it's very difficult to trod the untrodden path because everything that had to be done has been done. There are only a few stories to tell. So you are in trouble. You're in trouble in the creative profession, number one, because you don't have the money and you can't make a film. Because you have very little to say, because all that could have been said has been said before. And you are faced with serious competition. You're in trouble. So what do? My first film was called Shunno Theke Shuru, which in Bangla means starting from zero. The English title need not be an exact approximation of the Bangla. I tried to deal with what I thought at that point of time, which was the early 90s, was an important issue. I thought the most significant movement that affected Bengal after Indian independence was the underground movement of the 60s and 70s. I took this up and I viewed it as a movement of great proportions, a tumultuous movement, a movement in which academics were also involved, creative brains were involved, and yet it was a movement that went wrong somehow. But in trying to represent this movement through a piece of fiction, I used a cinematic form that departed from the straight narrative. Now, what is a narrative? Narrative is introduction, complication, crisis, climax, resolution. Straightforward storytelling. You're sucked into the story. I felt that if in art or painting, you need not always tell a story. You could convey a mood. When you hear a piece of music, a raga, say a Megha Mallar, or let's say Deepak, you don't have to light up a lamp by singing Deepak or quench that fire by Megha Mallar. It's a space that is created in your mind, but there's no story there as such. Why could I not create a film which would not need the crutches of literature and theatre? A film that would convey the moments of trepidation, the fear, the angst of those times. I therefore tried to break the traditional narrative mode and explore cinema. My commitment was towards cinema, experimenting it with all its visual complexity in terms of color, in terms of texture, in terms of composition, in terms of foregrounding and backgrounding. And in the process of my analyzing the medium of cinema, I would convey, to a certain extent, the period, those times which were horrific, terrifying, and yet thought-provoking. I didn't think it would work, didn't have the money. And, although this may sound like a cliche, I literally had to pawn my wife's jewelry. Spent everything, made the film, and it got stuck at the censors because it had contained one of the speeches of Mrs. Indira Gandhi in which she talked about progress, but we were showing prisoners being tortured in jails. So then began a very long process of trying to get the film released, to get it censored. Luckily, I would say it's fate, somehow the film received the President's Gold Medal. Once the film received the President's Gold Medal for its innovation, the barriers receded. It was luck, I felt, really. And luck is something which you really can't do without. Not, of course, like the famous gambler, who was born on the 7th day of the 7th month of the 7th year, and he thought that 7 was his lucky number. So he bet on the 7th horse, which came 7th, not like him. But luck is important. You can't deny it. But luck is not everything. Along with luck, one has to have faith and hope. And once again, coming back to sports, look at Saurav Ganguly. Despite the myriad criticisms, he is someone who's been able to come back. That is what inspires you. You can do it if you don't lose hope and faith. And most of all, if you don't think that your discipline, your area is all that you need to think of, it's important to look beyond cinema, filmmaking, sports, technology, philosophy, and look at life straight in the eye. That's what I've got. I've received my share of failures, maybe more than the successes. In fact, I'm going through a trough right now. I said I was not well physically and mentally, but I also said that that was the state of the world. So I satisfy myself by saying that things are not all right, and so things are not all right with me. So maybe that would be one way of looking at the world, and I know my time is up, but it's important to realize that if one doesn't make the right connections, your time could be up too. Thank you very much.
Sorry, we'll ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you said television.
Yes.
There's a lot of information on television which is actually bogging us down. It's almost like an idiot bomb.
Yes.
You have all these people involved with the movie making industry, with the television, with a lot of other things, right, with drama. Why? First of all, do you believe that there is enough experimentation happening, or are just people playing it safe? Have you turned movie making into an industry or a factory, or is it even an innovative art right now? And why are there so many few people doing it?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. Since I'm in the hallowed portals of the Indian Institute of Management, I will seek your permission to mention a small theory which might seem a little abstract, but it will explain the question and the answer. The famous philosopher Baudrillard has talked about what he calls the simulacrum. What is the simulacrum? The simulacrum is a term borrowed from Aristotle's Poetics. At that time, and my wife hates this example because she's a dog lover, Aristotle said that the German Shepherd or the Alsatian was the real dog. It was the dog. And the poodle was the simulacrum, because it was not a perfect dog. It's a very bad example for dog lovers. But what Aristotle is trying to say is that there is something which is real and there is something which is a copy of the real. Unfortunately, we are living in a world of simulacra. We are seeing the image of Sachin Tendulkar on the screen. We don't see Sachin Tendulkar. All that we see is a counterfeit. I'll give you another example. This is what we call the hyper-real. If you walk into a rock concert where, say, Madonna is singing, because the auditorium is so big, you require giant television screens. And on those giant television screens, you'll see images of Madonna. Now, when you attend that rock concert, are you watching Madonna singing? Or are you watching yourself watching Madonna sing? You're actually watching yourself watching Madonna. So it's reality once removed. The problem with television is, one, totally controlled by corporate houses, by money power. And somehow the corporate houses, and I'm sorry to say that the Indian Institute of Management, have lost the heart. You require a heart to move away from what is safe. Nobody wants to tread into unsafe ground. For example, can you tell me, is there a single program on television in which a filmmaker comes and talks to you like I did, shows films, explains concepts, explains theories? No. But it's there on the ZDF channel in Germany, it's there on Channel 5 in Italy, it's there in Channel 4 in Britain, in which a filmmaker, like say if Satyajit Ray were alive today, he would come and talk about cinema. Or champagne, nothing like that. So the first thing is, people are playing safe. You're absolutely right, it's become an industry. The moment I try to innovate, people say, no, I won't get money out of it. But there also, people are wrong. Somebody said, or I think it was you, and also Gurbashi, that if we don't have the alternative, how will we know what we want? You know, the beautiful example of Dr. Howard Moskowitz was explained, in which he said that people actually don't know what they want. They don't know that they actually want the slightly chunky tomato sauce. So you have to give space to people. I feel the independent voice is being lost.